Welcome to all our attendees. We'll be starting in just a minute when everyone has a chance to join. All right, well, let me just get started. I know there are a few people still going to be joining. Welcome to the STARS Strategic Training Achievements for Research Success Initiative that many of you know about. I'd like to give just a few minutes of questions presentation before we do questions and answers. The question and answers will be put into the chat. So please put your questions there, and I invite all of the leaders of our program and the team on our side to answer questions as they feel able, and I will do the same. And I will also try to answer some of the questions verbally. So this training program is supported by a D43 grant from the NCI. We're very grateful to the NCI for their support of this program. And I'm going to give you some overview for those of you who may have attended the session this last month. You will have seen some of the same information, but I hope that I can repeat it and it won't be too boring for all of you so that everybody's on the same page. Let me start by introducing our program team, the people who are involved in the research, planning and training program that you're going to see. Many of them are here today: Caroline Andrews, Brian Fortier, Mohammed Jallo, Alima Jede Agba, Emeka Odiaka, and Yuri Quintana, as well as myself. I also want to let you know that we have an advisory board that has been established, and this board is of a number of people whose names you're probably familiar with, very well known in the cancer field, and are very qualified to help us guide this program and select the appropriate candidates and ensure that the training is successful. So I also want to thank them for their participation in the program, and they're very grateful for their guidance. So let me just start with a couple of background slides about the training program that we have set up. And again, those of you who were in the training, the webinar last year will have also seen some of these. So first of all, the principles of our training are that we undertake bilateral interactions. We have mentorship that will involve input from both the US and Europe, as well as from Africa, for the trainee to understand practices that are both impactful and relevant to the local sub-Saharan African context. The protocols and the practices that we're developing for this training are intended to be Africa-centric. We recognize that the models for conduct in cancer research can be based on those developed in the US and elsewhere, but they have to be adapted to the setting in Africa in order to be successful and to develop the capacity, the data, the research training that's needed to ensure that cancer research in Africa is successful. And finally, we intend for this program and the work that is being done by the trainees to have global scientific impact, but local public health impact. So these proposed training will generate knowledge that is global and has scientific impact through publications and other translation as good as anywhere else in the world, but the trainees must be driven by local needs. So these are the sort of the general principles around which we have established this training. We've also set up what we call a communities of practice. So not only will there be training, but we expect that the individuals who are trained will have be part of a network that's going to be an ongoing discussion, ongoing learning, but discussion with their peers, applications in local context, consult with colleagues, and these can be their sponsors or mentors, through which they can share their local experience, and the cycle will continue where knowledge will be generated, not only scientific data, but knowledge and experience in the ability to conduct research in Africa. So we're setting up a whole community that we hope will have a very productive lifespan ongoing over many years. to create the structure and the community that is required for cancer research to be successful. As you know, we have a number of participating networks, and just wanted to say that this is something that we think is going to be very important for us to be able to establish the success of this program is by linking with established research and clinical networks, including networks that are involved in genetics, prostate cancer, colorectal cancer, breast cancer, esophageal cancer, hepatopancreatic biliary cancer, etc. And so a number of existing networks. Now, just note that you don't have to be part of one of these networks to be involved in the training, but we want you to be aware that there are some established networks that we're building in that we hope will be of value as people develop their careers and want to make connections across the world. The training involves two tracks. First of all, there's a principal investigator track that we're calling the PI stars. This is doctoral level investigators who will be trained to demonstrate leadership and an independent or collaborative research. And second, we have a project manager, PM stars track, for those interested in gaining skills in project management to be able to support the conduct of research. And so I'll tell you a little bit about each of these, but in general, on all of these slides, you can see that there's an email for you to contact us if you have not already, to ask questions about the application process or the training or anything that's irrelevant to you. And then most of this information can be found on our website, www.africancancerstars.org. So the training itself, activities and timeline, include a common set of core curriculum and career planning called the Promote Africa core curriculum. This occurs over a 6 to 8 week period that everybody in both the PI and the PM track will contribute. And after that, the tracks will split, but will remain interactive. If you're in the principal investigator track, you will be developing a project that involves creating aims, study design, getting mentor assignments, etc., doing structured project development, getting peer critiques, mentor critiques, and you'll have the ability to do scientific exchanges, literally travel, assuming that COVID lets us do that, which I think it should, that you will do scientific exchanges. You'll have the opportunity to travel or meet with people from other institutions who can be scientific or logistical or technical experts in your training. And this will culminate with you writing a grant. Hopefully it'll be a grant that you actually submit, but it could just be a grant that you're using for the training process. It will go through a study section, a review process, and if you are able to actually submit this grant for funding with the help of the training team. If you're in the project manager track, there will be mentor assignments and case-based didactics and guided mentored practicum project with your mentor and peer support to help you guide a specific project. The goal of this training track is to ultimately have a project management certification. We're going to be working with the Project Management Institute as well as Project University to provide this training so that you can become certified. And this, the expectation is this training will happen part-time because we all know you have regular jobs. So we're setting it up so that you can participate part-time over a 9-month period so that you won't have to fully take time off from your regular jobs in order to participate in this training. Just a little bit of background about the Promote Africa curriculum. This is a curriculum that is designed for everyone who's involved in cancer research in Africa, including the PI and the PM tracks. It'll involve fundamental training in ethics, regulatory practices, logistical issues, and fiscal oversight. So the things that everyone needs to know in order to make sure that the research can happen. This won't involve necessarily the scientific training or the training in the actual projects that you may work on, but it is something that everyone needs to be trained in when they're doing work in this area, whether you're a PI or a PM. So a little bit to the eligibility and requirements, and I encourage you to type in your questions in the Q&A if you have them, and we'll answer them going forward. So applicants must be sub-Saharan African nationals resident in sub-Saharan Africa. We're proposing this because we feel it's important to develop cancer research capacity in Africa. So at this stage, everyone who applies and participates in the program is sub-Saharan African nationals resident in sub-Saharan Africa. We do have a list of eligible countries in the African STARS website. The only countries that really aren't eligible are those for which there are embargoes or other kind of barriers to receiving funding. Otherwise, most every country in Africa is eligible. Each applicant must have a sponsor. So the sponsor is somebody at your institution, somebody who you work with or have a relationship with, who can really serve as your primary link, primary mentor, primary coordinator of the work you're going to do. The sponsor has to be identified in advance, up front, and they should be qualified in some area of research, in project management, in academics, whatever it may be. And you may also identify a mentoring team if you have people who are mentors, but one of the goals of the program will be to actually create a mentoring team with you. So that if you are selected, you will be we will help you identify people to cover areas of your research, your projects, your activities that may be people you don't know yet, or people that may help you. So you're allowed to identify mentors if you have them, but you're not required to at the stage of the application, whereas you are required to identify a sponsor. So the organizations that are eligible must be located in sub-Saharan Africa. They can be public or state or private institutions of higher education, nonprofit organizations, local, state, provincial, or federal government organizations, hospital, medical centers, etc., private or public. And we employees of for-profit organizations, so for-profit companies are not eligible to apply. So these apply. So we can, if you have a question about specifically whether your institution is eligible or not, please let us know. Applicants can come from any institution. And as I mentioned, we have a list of pre-approved, quote unquote, pre-approved institutions. These are institutions that we know have the capacity to train and research and the capacity to mentor and bring people up to speed. We only want this because we want to make sure that if you're getting training, that you actually have the resources and infrastructure that's needed for the success of your training. So we've identified some that we know are, have that capacity, and there is a list of those, but you can apply from any institution. You don't have to be a member of the pre-approved institutions in order to apply. We may just ask you for a little more information about your institution if we're not familiar with it. And this is a competitive review process. That is to say, we'll have applicants and we will select from among the applicants. So there will be a scientific review by an international expert panel, people that will be gauging the potential for your success, the quality of the work you're capable of doing, the institutional environment, things like that will be used to choose the selected trainees. And then we'll have a programmatic review by a steering committee. And the reason for the programmatic review is to make sure we have adequate representation from across Africa, by gender, by discipline, by the type of science, the type of work that might go on. And we'll base this around both the scientific review, but also make sure that we don't have everybody in the program be exactly alike, from the same institution, doing the same kind of science. So there's a process that's going to be competitive for this review that you'll hear about. The application process, we had requested a letter of intent submission by the end of last calendar year, which has passed, but the LOI submission is optional, so people can still apply for the grant even if they did not submit an LOI, but we really do want you to submit the LOI so that we can plan for the review and the processes going forward. Today is obviously the second informational session, and your grants will all be due on February 4th. So the online application submission deadline is by that date. No applications will be accepted after February 4th, so please get it in by then. You obviously have the ability to apply online through the AfricanCancerStars.org website. That's where all the information can be found and where the application materials are. So again, contact us if you have questions about it. After that point, we will begin the peer review by external experts, have the programmatic review. We will notify you at the very latest by April 1st, and the training will begin by May 1st, or in May. So let me just stop there and give you some of the information about our inquiries, and the programmatic information can again be all found on the website. So let me just continue by addressing some of the questions that are in the Q&A. Benjamin Arkobanam is asked, will an application be complete without a US-based collaborator? Yes, the answer is you do not need a US-based collaborator. In fact, we don't require it. If you have a US-based collaborator, that's fine, but you are not required to have one. In fact, the training really should be centric around Africa and African institutions and investigators. There's nothing wrong with having a US investigator or a European investigator as part of your team. Your sponsor has to be from the institution at which you'll be trained in Africa. The mentoring team can be from anywhere if you want to specify them. Does that mean the applicant does not need a fully developed research proposal? Yes, that is correct. You don't need a fully developed research proposal because that is the goal of the training, is to go through and develop your research proposal. As you'll see in the application materials, we want to get an idea of what the work is you have in mind. And that will matter if we feel like the scientific question, the approach you plan to take very generically is promising and interesting and important. By telling us that, that will matter in your application, but you absolutely do not need a fully developed research proposal because that's the goal of this training, is to develop that, and it will change over time. Let's see. So Sunday, Olatunji has asked, please, could you share the recordings of this webinar? Yes. So the webinar will be on the website. The last webinar is also on the website, and these will be placed on the website as well. So hopefully, please look at the website. That's where they'll be placed, and they'll be available to anyone. Daniel Ojuka is asking, the sponsor should be local even from the US. So the sponsor should be local in the sense that it should be from the institution where you plan to be trained, but they shouldn't be from the US because the sponsor is going to be at your local institution in Africa. We don't want you to have your training in the US because the training should occur in the local setting in Africa. So the training should not be at a US institution, and so therefore the sponsor shouldn't be from a US institution, but you can have collaborators, mentors from US institutions. You're also asking if the University of Nairobi is one of the pre-approved institutions. The answer is yes. I think if it's not on the website yet, it is going to be a pre-approved institution. And I think the goal is for you to, anyone can apply from any institutions, need not be from a pre-approved institution. But if you are at a pre-approved institution, that makes it just a little bit easier for us to know that you're in fact coming from a place that has the qualifications, the infrastructure and resources to do the training we're looking for. And is the outcome the training? So if you're looking for the PI track, the outcome, the process is the training. The outcome is going to be a couple fold. One is that you will have become part of a community of researchers. You'll be part of a team, a class that will be in ongoing discussion. You will develop a proposal, a protocol that will teach you by doing, will teach you how one writes grants, how one creates research processes, et cetera. And so the one concrete outcome is a proposal, a grant application that, ideally you can submit for funding that will help you with. So the outcome is manyfold, but certainly the process of the training will lead to some of these projects and proposals. For the project manager track, the primary outcome is going to be getting you to the point that you're qualified to be certified through the CAPM or the PMI certification that exists out there. So being able to pass the test for project management certification is one of the primary goals of the outcome that's different between the project manager and the PI tracks. Yeah, so what happens to the requirement of support letters from the mentoring team if you haven't had the identified mentors? So you don't have to have, it's not required to have support letters from mentors. There's only a requirement of support letter from your sponsor. And if you have mentors that you would like to have submit letters, that's fine, but they're not required. It's only the sponsor letter that's required, and you only need to are required to identify the sponsor in your application. I hope that's clear. So the mentor letters or mentor identification and letters are not required. And if that's not clear in the application instructions, we'll certainly let you know. We'll change that, but yeah. I guess you're asking, Daniel Ojuka is asking again, can someone confirm whether they submitted? I think you mean the submitted the letters or the applicants, but if for the applicants, you will receive, once submitted, you will receive a confirmation email saying that your application has been received and is complete. And also we can send the same email to your sponsor if that's helpful to them. So you will receive email confirmation about the submissions. Clement Nar is asking, can new institutions be used for training with a sponsor from a pre-approved institution within the country? So yes, I think that the institution that you choose is up to you. Obviously, it's going to be important that you're at or have ready access to that institution. So for example, if you're located in Dakar in Senegal and you propose your training in Cape Town, it'll be difficult to understand how that training will happen if you are not able to interact directly with your sponsor and mentors, whether you'll be able to do the research in a different institution or a different city from where you are. So it's certainly possible. Say if you're in Nairobi and you want to do research or training at Aga Khan Hospital, but you're at the University of Nairobi currently, you're in the same city, you have a link to the place and to the sponsor, and you can show us that you have direct contact with the sponsor and the institution, then that's great. So you certainly can use a new institution, but keep in mind these are competitive applications, and if you can convince us that doing the work at an institution that's different than yours is going to work, then that's great. If it's hard to imagine that it's going to be successful for you to work in this new environment, then your application may just not be as competitive. So keep that in mind in general. So Bariki Mchome is asking, is there a certification for the principal investigator track? So we will give you a certificate. It won't be a formal certification in the sense of a degree or something. There will be something you can hang on your wall. But the real goal is the training and the experience you have, less than the certification per se. But there will be some type of acknowledgement that you completed the training successfully. So Lebogang Mokokwe is asking, for the training plan part of the application, what level of detail are you expecting applicants to provide? And so, the application is short. It's not intended to be extremely long. I think what we're hoping that you'll be able to tell us is what you hope to gain in the training plan part. So why do you, as the applicant, feel that you'll will gain something from this training? What is it that you'll gain? How are you building on what you've learned, what your training has been in the past? And what is it that you think you need to do in order to be successful for training in the future? So the detail is not critical, again, because it's short. It's more philosophical and conceptual about the training that why you think you need this training, how you will benefit from this training. But we don't want or need very, very specific, specific actions. If you, for example, say, in order to do my work in the PI track, I think I'm going to need to do an exchange program with Harvard in Boston, and you can explain why that's useful, that's part of the training, and you can say that, but you don't need to have that level of description in the application itself. The budget information in the application asks for training courses, conferences. How can this be provided if one is not sure of the availability of the courses? That's a very good point. And I just want to make it really clear. I don't think it's entirely clear in the application process that we are asking for an approximate budget, but we're not going to necessarily hold you exactly to the budget because of these kinds of questions that you're raising. It's very clear that there are some courses that are examples of things that you'll do, you could do. There may be training or exchanges that you have in mind, and we're asking you to give us a general sense of, yes, I would like to do a training exchange. Yes, I would like to attend a course. But at the point of the course, you will make that decision. We don't know exactly what the cost of these courses will be. We don't know what airfares will look like or hotel rooms will look like in terms of cost. So that at the point of your specific training or exchange, you'll be able to make the decision about that cost. And mostly this will help us give an idea, get an idea of whether you thought through the kind of exchanges and courses you might be interested in taking, but it's not a contract that you're signing. So if you say, I'd like to attend the AACR meeting in 2022 or 2023 or whatever it might be, we're not going to force you to attend exactly that conference because you said it. We're just trying to get a sense of the budget that you are requesting and to make sure that that you have sufficient funding to do the kinds of things that will help your training. So I'm not sure if that's an adequate question, but there is flexibility there. Adetutu Adisa is asking, are applicants required to prepare a budget since there's no need for a full proposal? So again, just as I just said, the components of the budget can be things like, I need research supplies. For example, I need supplies that will to do preliminary data collection, or I need a laptop, or I would like to do an exchange with the University of Calabar because they have expertise in this area. But again, it's a proposed budget, and it is not a contract that will look at down to the dollar and cent amounts. It's mostly to help you and to help us understand what your training might consist of. Professor Abate, will you please advise how to fill the budget information? Yeah, so I guess this is the theme. The budget information I think is really hard, and it's great that some of you have been giving thought to this because it is difficult. Hopefully the answers that I gave are clear enough, but what I would say is that if you really still are having trouble guiding your application in any way, including the budget, reach out to us and let us know through the email on the that we have. So that you'll be able to, ask specific questions. Because again, the budget is a little difficult when you don't know exactly what you may end up doing. How does one need to apply to have an institution to become approved? There is a questionnaire on the website that is, we can send you the link to, that is, we ask questions about the institution. You can have that institutional information filled out, and then your institution can be approved. And so that's, it's on the web, but again, contact us if you can't find that questionnaire, and we can send it to you, and you can then have your institution be pre-approved. And again, just to remind you, you don't have to have your institution pre-approved to apply. It's just something that will, first of all, help us understand more about your institution, but second of all, help us create a network of institutions that we think are interested and capable of doing research in this area. And so it's optional. So are people on fellowship programs eligible? Yes, Temeskin is asking. Yes, anyone who is on an existing training program can be eligible. Again, the fellowship, and again, depends on, I don't know what you mean by the fellowship, but if there's a fellowship on a postdoctoral fellowship or a clinical fellowship, those are there to pay your salary, to train you formally. This program can really supplement that by allowing you to spend additional time formally developing your training, your skills, your grant proposal, things like that. So we welcome people who are on fellowships of any kind, really at most any level, at the doctoral level for the PI track. To participate in this program. So there's no concern of overlap or conflicts in terms of existing programs that you may be in. For the PM track, really the same thing. We really hope that this program will enhance and embellish anything that you're doing in terms of developing your career, including existing training programs. So we have access to the recordings of this webinar. Yes, the webinar recordings will be on the website. BA asks, again, must there be a budget for this training? We'd like you to put in a budget. Again, the problems that I just described of that are coming up, what is in that budget? What can I ask for? These are things that you can help us by defining the kinds of training that you have in mind. And we will certainly be providing more information to you and others about the budget if you have any questions about it. Why is indirect costs not allowed? That's a very good question, and we've been having contacts with some of our budget people about why we cannot provide indirect costs. The bottom line answer is that that's a discussion that we've had internally and with NIH about how to provide the funding for you. So the indirect costs, it takes away money from what the institution, what we can give each of the trainees. And so we would like not to have indirect costs. But if your institution requires indirect costs, we can have a conversation with you about that. But we have elected, in order to use the money most efficiently and effectively, to not include indirect costs. And will the funding be paid to the individual? No, the funding needs to be paid to your institution. This is a requirement of NCI, but it can be paid to you through your institution, and we can work that out individually by your institution. But there are certain ways, if your institution cannot provide the money, you cannot accept the money, there are ways we can do it to reimburse the individual or pay in advance to the individual. But this is a grant funding essentially, and so we can't just write a check to put into your own personal account. We can reimburse, we can give advances for things like travel and things like that, but because it's U.S. federal government money, we have to follow certain rules, and we can give you more information about that. If the fund is to be paid to the institution because of the indirect costs, will that be deducted up front? And that's exactly the problem. If your institution requires indirect costs be paid, then we have to work out how that will be done, and it may have to be deducted up front. We're trying to avoid that. And as you're very well aware, we are not required to pay indirect costs, but institutions sometimes require that indirect costs be provided. And so this is a problem of why we have elected not to give indirect costs, because it takes away money from the grant itself. So I would suggest, because every institution is going to be a little bit different, and the budget is really quite flexible that you talk to us individually about the specific situation, and we'll see what we can work out. Are PM projects going to be only research? The goal of this training is research, obviously. And so we are trying to figure out how to create research infrastructure. The PM projects don't have to be research per se, but they do need to be relevant to research. So that it says, let me try to clarify that. What we don't want for project management is to support clinical service or clinical care per se. So if your project, if your proposal is to learn how to provide better clinical care, and that's the only goal of the training, that would probably not be eligible for this training. If it's related to clinical care in terms of how research benefits from it, or how that research is going to be related to improvement in clinical care or practices of clinical care that are research evidence-based, then that would be okay. So, you know, the general answer is this is a research training grant for both PM and PI. If you have only, say, clinical care as your goal, this is not the place probably to do that. But clinical care can be an aspect of what gets done during the project, as long as it's a research-based training and project. And again, for every one of these questions, if I'm not answering properly, please let me know. I'm glad to answer again in the chat if I haven't given you the right answer, or you can, you know, follow up with us individually. So Sheikh Omar Batayi is asking, can a candidate who already has some data regarding a specific cancer but needs to help in statistical analysis could be used to develop further studies apply? Yes, absolutely. We expect that everyone who applies will have some experience, some will have data, some will have preliminary activities they've been doing, and, you know, certainly having shown that you're capable of generating data, having data on which to build, having research infrastructure already there is a great thing. It will certainly facilitate your training. And if you need help in statistical analysis, the goal here is not to pay for a statistician to do your work. The goal here is for you to become more facile in doing research. But if that means you need a mentor who can help you with statistical analysis, or a colleague, that's certainly something that would be under the guise of this training. But the training's intention is not to pay for a statistician to do analysis for you. So again, there's a subtle difference there. But in your application, you'd want to be able to say, here's what my training is going to be. Here's what I'm going to be doing in order to become a qualified, independent, collaborative investigator. Oh, and by the way, I have data and I would like to do some analysis during the training, and I'm going to put in funding for a statistician to work with me on that. That would be okay. But not just to, the training is the key part, not the ability to analyze data that may already exist. So again, that's a subtle difference, but I hope it's clear. Professor Abate is asking, how many hours per week will the didactic training require? And the answer is that in the syllabus, we have started to put together, and we can share that. It's not quite done, but the goal is for the training to occur in the evenings, late afternoons and evenings of in Africa time for the participants, so that we are hoping that these, the training, the courses, the didactic lectures will occur after your regular work hours. And so that there will be minimal interruption to your regular work. We're proposing that the courses will happen a couple of times a week for an hour to two, for example, a couple of times a week. So the actual amount of time you spend is going to be somewhat, you know, it's not going to be a huge amount of actual time if the didactic proportion. All of the lectures will be recorded, so you can look at them at your leisure, but there will be live discussion and other kinds of sessions that will be part of the training as well. So it's going to be, we're trying to make it as absolutely flexible as possible. What evaluation and competence will be required to acknowledge as successfully completed and certified? So again, because the training is so individualized and specialized, the training will be guided around the individual's need. So we don't have a list of criteria that will say, yes, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to be certified in whatever way. What we're hoping to be able to do is work with each individual to make sure that they get the individualized training and experience that they need to move on to, in the PI track, a successful grant application or a successful project, in the PM track, a successful project management certification, for example. So again, there's evaluation and competence will be done, but not necessarily all the same for every individual, just based on the very specialized nature of the training we're trying to provide. Hope that's clear. Can a person who did not submit a letter of intent be eligible to apply? Yes, you can. We want everyone to apply who can. The letter of intent was, important for us to know for a couple of reasons. How many people we're getting to apply, what topics we're expecting to see, what kinds of training we're expecting the participants to need, and so that we can plan the course better, and so that we can make sure we have the right reviewers for the applications, so that if somebody, for example, applies in nursing palliative care and wants to develop research in that area, we want to make sure we have somebody who's qualified to review that application. So the letter of intent helps us to understand that. And so please do submit an application, even if you didn't submit a letter of intent, but you can always submit a letter of intent now if that's something that you need. That's helpful. We're glad to have that as well. But now at this point, we're starting already to select the reviewers and understand what the application pool is going to look like. So if you submit a letter of intent now, we may not be able to accommodate the information that you provide. For newly proposed training institutions, when will information about their suitability become available, and can I go ahead and apply for training in such an institution? From Ismail Legason from Uganda. Yes. So again, the training institutions it's not required that your training be at one of these institutions. So the information about newly proposed pre-approved institutions will be put up on the website almost as soon as they get submitted. We review the information that's submitted on the website, and we evaluate it for whatever it is that's being told. And if it looks like the institution has the capacity and the resources that we think are going to be helpful, then we approve it almost right away. So it's not a very complex or difficult process. And so you'll see that almost right away. But again, it's not required that your institution be pre-approved in order to have it be a participating institution. So actually, that looks like the last question. Please submit any others if you have them. I'll wait just a minute to make sure if there are others. I certainly see the theme here that is coming up. There's some great questions, a lot of very thoughtful questions about the budget, the institutions, the mentoring teams, things like that. And I hope I was clear that we're really looking for people who show promise, who show the likelihood of being successful in conducting research in Africa, either as PIs or PMs, that the institution that will select the best candidates based on the brief proposals that they make for their future proposed training, the environment that they're in, that is their institution. Is it an institution that looks like it can support the kind of training that is needed? The sponsor, are they qualified? Are they the kind of person who will be helpful in the career development for the individual and help provide resources and contacts that they'll need for the training process? That the budget is flexible and not intended to be a contract into the sense of being very formal, but in fact will help us to understand what resources the trainee is going to need in order to be successful during the program. And so it's a guide, but not a contract of exactly what money will be spent and how. And then the institution need not be pre-approved, but obviously if you're coming from a pre-approved institution, it just helps us to know that you're in fact coming from a place that is qualified, but it isn't required. The training needs to be in Africa by Africans and at African institutions, but you certainly can have collaborators from anywhere in the world, mentors and et cetera, to develop part of your training. So I don't see any other questions. I don't know if there's any comments that our team on the call who are guiding this, Yuri Quintana, Emeka Odiaka, Alima Jedi Agba, Carolyn Andrews, who are part of the leadership team, if they want to make any other comments or they noticed anything in the questions that I didn't answer correctly or clearly, or any other comments you want to make. And if not, that's fine too. Great. Well, I think you see on the slide that's up that you can email us about inquiries, and all of the information that you need should be on the africanstars.org website. So hopefully you'll find the information you need. We look forward to your applications. We've gotten some wonderful letters of intent from people who look just, fantastic, and we're looking forward to reviewing your applications. And we really look forward to participating with you in developing your careers and developing your research and developing the network that we can use to improve the cancer research in Africa. Thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing from you. Happy New Year to everybody. And we'll be back soon after the application deadline to give you more information about your applications and the response to the hopefully successful people that we select. Thank you very much.